Yeah, we're live 4:30. So, some more your morning wake up call, but it's after morning. And then I'll be back at 7 because I got lots of stuff to talk about today. In fact, I had to delete a bunch of stuff when I in the intro for this thing, at least the information. I figured it was too much. Got to save it for later. I do want to talk about later tonight. We're going to talk about at 7 at the 7 o'clock live feed. We're going to talk about the 400 horsepower stock cam small block Ford and why I don't think that is possible. We're going to go into. I did some digging and did some comparison of testing that I've done, and with some of the individual components that were used and stuff. And I think I've come across some stuff and why I don't think it worked, but why. Regardless, I really want to test it anyway. So that's something that will happen. So we'll talk about that tonight. But tonight I kind of want to touch on the V10 some more, the 6.8 liter Triton V10, and why I think that the 3-valve motor is going to be a better choice than the 2-valve motor. There are things that I like about the 2-valve motor and things I like about the 3-valve version, but ultimately, obviously it'd be better to test both of them. Just test everything, but we can't do that. It's all of that is just time and money, and as much as we want to do lots of stuff, sometimes we just can't do that. It's just not in the cards. So on the V, and then I have an update. Excuse me, have an update on the Dodge Omni GLHS. You guys will know, loyal viewers will know, the 85 Omni GLHS. We did an update on it and put a T2 version, a stock T2 in the GLH T1. We put a GLHS T2 combination and then ran it on the dyno and lost the head gasket. We've now, I think, realized what happened. Well, and shout out to Ben and Brian at the car farm who did all of this, including the testing and stuff. But they lost a head gasket during dyno testing. But it looks like I'm to blame because I'm the one that put the motor together. But this thing had head studs on it. ARPs, and it also had the head gasket that an old one that was laying around, whatever it was. And I went through the torque procedure that I normally do on every other deal. But when they went to take it apart, they didn't, it didn't. The bolts were really not very tight. They were about 50 foot-pounds, and they're thinking that because they looked at everything else and didn't see any other issues, and they're thinking that might have been what allowed the thing to to blow the head gasket. It just didn't have enough clamping force on it. I don't know. I don't normally on the LS stuff. I have never on any of these motors retorqued the head gasket after we've run it. Particularly on MLS head gaskets. This was not that. So maybe that's more necessary on and this thing didn't get hot until it blew a head gasket. So there was not any, extreme temperatures until later. But the head surface seems to be flat. The deck surface seems to be flat. There's nothing hurt on the motor. Now the motor is actually back together and it's running apparently. So again, huge shout out to Ben and Brian. I asked Ben to do a cranking compression test, and they're all in the 130, 135 range, all the way across. So there's nothing that's hurt. So hopefully it's together, and he said it's together and running. And so hopefully it will go back over to the chassis dyno, and we're going to get some more data from it. Hopefully log actual air fuel. And then the other thing I want to see is timing, and maybe I'll see if we can, even if they just watch it with a timing light, and I want to know what the timing is. And then we can run some more tests with the stock computer and the stage 2 and see what's happening. The thing that I'm most interested in on that particular deal is when it's all stock, I want to see the and we may have seen this in the power curves already, but I want to see these cars. I think the way that they advertise them is they will allow 10 seconds of what they call overboost. And so if it was rated at, let's say it was rated at 7 PSI, it will allow 9 pounds for 10 seconds. And then if you're out of boost for 10 seconds, then it will reset the clock basically and allow that again. Well, during a run in fourth gear, certainly the run may take more than 10 seconds. So what I want to see is if the computer is doing this, so it like during the run, it will have more boost and then the boost will drop. And then it will continue out whatever the rest of the run is. If the run at wide open throttle under boost lasts more than 10 seconds, I want to see that happening. I want that to be, that's one of my favorite things about that particular motor and what it offered way back in the day, because this was in the 80s, 85, 86. So I thought that that's a pretty cool feature. So I want to see if that's happening on the dyno, because it has a stock computer and a stock harness and all of that stuff. So all of that should be happening. And it has control over the computer has control over the turbo and stuff. So I want to see that that's happening. Later on, we'll take control of that and do other testing and stuff. But for right now, I just want that to be, I want that to be a real thing. And then I wonder if anybody's gone in and found a way to change the timer on that. Like, could you make it for 15 seconds instead of 10 seconds so that it could run a whole quarter mile, in stock trim? Because that thing's probably on a good launch and everything, that probably is probably a 14-second car at that 175 horsepower deal. At least that's what they were, if you believe some of the testing back in the day. But I want to see if that's a thing. And then also these things were also limiting torque production down low with a factory computer to save the transmission. So I want to see all this like in real time, because if we were to put a standalone management system in it, we'd just get rid of all that. Then it will just be whatever the turbo is going to do and whatever the wastegate's going to do with, if we want to run 10 pounds, it's just 10 pounds and it's just 10 pounds all the way across. That would be nice too. But these little trickery things I think are kind of cool with the factory ECU. And I'm also curious if anybody out there knows, let me know. And I thought that somebody sent me this. I'm going to dig back through my stuff, my emails and stuff. If somebody knows what the factory timing curves are on these things, particularly on a GLHS, the T2 stuff. And then we also have Ben and Brian have the Mopar performance computer too, to raise the boost up and we can make a lot more power. So we'll be able to try all that. So good news on the GLHS front, which is awesome. So now we want to talk about the Triton V10s. So I want to get one of those. That's the next engine on the list of things that I would like to try to test, because if only because I want to make an intake manifold for it and a V10 intake manifold and a twin turbo deal. It would be much easier for me to make an intake manifold for the 2-valve stuff, because the flanges, the bolt of the head, are aluminum, and they already have the provisions for the injectors, which makes life a lot easier when you're trying to build a Super Ritchie custom intake manifold. So that would make life easier. But the thing that I really like about the 3-valve, it has a composite intake manifold, which I also like, because of heat soak. I actually like the composite manifolds, because when they switched over to the composite manifolds, like with the 3-valve Mustang, that's a much better intake manifold than the factory PI 2-valve intake manifold is relative to their engine families. The composite 3-valve deal is much better. And so I would assume that the V10 truck intake manifold on the 3-valve also is much better, but it being composite doesn't lend itself well to me doing a Super Ritchie twin plenum, twin throttle body, cross ram or flip ram. We'll call that a flip ram, or doing a Super Ritchie Sky Ram version of it where we have it be 30 or 40 inches tall or whatever. And I wouldn't even be opposed. And this might be a good one to, in fact, we should probably do this. I should just go up to the roof and then come back down, so we could just double the length of whatever that is. Let's say that it's 5 feet up and 5 feet down, or 4 feet, or whatever it is. And then we would see what the tuning is for something that's, just ridiculously long, and try to run it. And if we're making lots of torque, then that's what we're trying to do. But the thing that I like about the 3-valve, and the intake manifold is probably good, but we know that the heads are much better. I haven't flowed these, but I have flowed 3-valve V8 ones versus 2-valve ones, and the 3-valve flow way more. It makes a lot more power. And we see that in the maximum ratings for these two things, 310 horsepower and 425 foot-pounds for the 2-valve, and 362 horsepower and 457 foot-pounds for the 3-valve. And so we see that And I don't know if anybody knows, please chime in. You can't see me? You should be able to. Oh, you're telling James to restart. Everybody else can see, right? Everybody else can see me, right? Right. Yeah, so it seems to be. But the thing that I like, again, we're getting into the three valve deal. The thing that I like about it is having more cylinder head flow is always better. It makes your life much easier when you try to then go ahead and make more power. So if we were to put cams, if I was to have cams made, or if there are already cams available for the three valve, the gains that you would get with cams on a three valve would be more than you would get on a two valve because you have more head flow to play with. So it's the difference between, putting cams in a 706 headed motor versus a rec port headed motor is you got, 230 CFM versus 315 CFM to play with. So the amount of power that they'll support are much, much greater on the three valve. And it makes more power already. So if we just use and I have a quick question before we talk about turbocharging these things. If anybody knows on these V10s, there are different power ratings for, I think for the three valve, 288, 320, and then the 362 was in one specific year, I guess, in a Super Duty or something. And then they also use these in school buses or Bluebirds or something like that. But my question is this: are the different power ratings that they have for these things more often than not, what they do are not physical changes? Like they don't change the compression, they don't change the cam timing, they don't change the intake manifold. What they do is tune them differently. So they put limiters on them for RPM. They take a bunch of timing away. They can on variable cam motors change that part of it, but usually it's that they detune them. And so I want to know if anybody knows out there, are these changes in the power potential just from tuning? Because you're tuning quite a bit of power out here, and all that takes is, hey, let's knock 10 or 15 degrees out of this thing, 10 or 15 degrees of timing, and then we can lose a bunch of power. And also if one of them makes peak power at 4,500, if we say, look, we're only allowing this thing to rev to 4,000, we're going to put a limiter on it so that they can never get to where this thing makes peak power. That will also do it. So let me know if you guys know what the difference is on these things, if there are actual differences, like physical differences in the motor, or if they're, and I'm going to go try to search this also, but I thought maybe, we got some sharp guys here. I thought maybe some of the guys might know. But if we assume that we're starting off, if we assume that, 362 horsepower, that they have the potential to do that, with optimum timing and or whatever their factory timing is and the factory exhaust manifolds and all that stuff, 362 horsepower and 457 foot-pounds of torque. If we use that as our starting point, the way that I run it on the engine dyno, which I will probably start with the factory exhaust manifolds and an open dual exhaust, but an electric water pump and no accessories and open throttle bodies and there's some kind of air inlet going into it. If we assume that, then my guess is this thing, and that this will be our poll for today. .8-liter 3-valve V10 is factory rated at 362 horsepower max. Okay, 6.8-liter 3-valve V10 is factory rated at 362 horsepower maximum. Will that number be over 400 when run on the engine dyno? So when we run it on the engine dyno, we don't run it the way that they're factory rated at. So we don't have accessories. We have open exhaust. We have an optimized tune. We run it colder. We run it with an open throttle body. So they always make more power the way that I run them than the way that the factory runs them. Because when the factory runs them and rates them for this power level, they run it at temperature, which is going to be near 200 degrees. They run it with a full exhaust, including cats, all of that stuff, all the way back. They don't rate these numbers at the wheels. This is all at the flywheel. But when the engines run in their test cell to certify the power output, they run it the way that I'm describing. So I'm going to go ahead and put the pole up. They run it with full factory exhaust. Like I said, cats, stock exhaust manifolds, exhaust pipes, cat back, all the way back. All the accessories. They run it with the full air intake, the air box, filter, all of that stuff. They run it at temperature, and they run it with a factory tune. So the way that we run it is different than all those things, and it always adds power. So my question is, do you guys think that it will make, when we run it on the engine dyno, will it make over 400 horsepower? And we won't be limiting this thing. I'll also have an optimized tune. It'll be cold, optimized tune, open exhaust after the stock exhaust manifolds, no accessories, and an open throttle body with some sort of, air inlet tube or radius entry, or even just an open throttle body. It doesn't really matter. So will it make over 400 horsepower? Let me know what you guys are thinking. Quite honestly, I'd be surprised if it doesn't. If that 362 number is real, I'm kind of thinking that 400 is going to be doable. And then, after we start doing some other things, putting headers on it and stuff, who knows? But let's say 400 is our new number. Let's say that we can make 400 horsepower with it on the engine dyno. And my guess is the torque number is probably going to be 480 or 490 foot-pounds of torque. I wouldn't be surprised if it's up in that range. Especially if we put, after we put long tube headers on, maybe we'll see 500 foot-pounds on some NA stuff. That would be very, very cool. But let's say we see 400 horsepower. If we saw 400 horsepower, what's going to happen when we had 14.7 pounds of boost? That should be 800 horsepower, especially if we ran boost on this thing with E85 and an optimized tune, big enough injectors, all that stuff. If the thing will hold that, I don't see any reason why that's not doable. It should be. I mean, having enough turbo to do 800 horsepower, twin GT35s would be perfect on this, probably, given the displacement. That should be more than enough power. And then if you did cams on this thing, I don't even know if you would need to do ported heads on this. Ported heads would always help, but I think the 3-valve probably has enough flow. I want to see what these stock heads flow, and then we could multiply it out, and we have to multiply it out differently because it's a 10-cylinder, not an 8-cylinder. It's going to be more than double the peak flow, assuming that we're getting to that peak flow with the cam lift. But if we put cam in it, I don't know, can we make 450? That would be good. 450 NA, and especially with a cam and a super Richie intake manifold, put a short runner deal on there, or a cross ram, or something. Even if it just looks cool, it makes 800 horsepower. More boost. Could it be 1,000 horsepower before it breaks? Who knows? I don't know. That's why I get all excited about this stuff. So let me know. Let me know what you guys think. Scrolling. Everyone's in the house. Everybody in the club. No ARP or MLS. On the 2.2 liter Dodge, I did use MLS, but not ARP. And I did use ARP, but not MLS. And they have that there. I bought one for it. The reason that I didn't use it on that motor is because we didn't surface the head and surface the block the way that I needed to do to get the right RA number to use MLS gaskets. I think I've read lots of stuff on the Dodge forums where guys are saying, oh, no, we don't use MLS gaskets. And my guess is the reason that they don't, because most of the guys lift the head when they're doing head gaskets. They don't take the head off. They lift the head up, take the old head gasket out, slide another one in. But if you were building the motor and you surface the head and surface the block and surface it so it's very, very smooth with the right RA number, and use an MLS head gasket and then use JRP studs, you're not going to blow the head gasket. If you do, then you hurt something in the motor. So having but it has to be prepped, and this one was not, which I think is a recipe for disaster. And I think guys that have tried to put MLS gaskets on there, I'll bet more often than not, maybe every time, that they didn't prep the head and the block properly. And so if they blew a head gasket or whatever, all these MLS head gaskets don't work. No, they do. Just look at everything else that you've applied them to, and there's no reason that it wouldn't work. But again, proper preparation goes a long way. We're putting a Mopar Performance head gasket on. Mike, 759 horsepower on my Chevy 469 or 496. Very cool. 7,000 string gap. So what was that? What was that combo, man? Give me some deets. Trailblazer SS LY6 was tight when assembled. 8 to thrust and main bearing. Uh-oh. Yeah, James, it's always a 3 bad motors and you put all the stuff together. Sometimes you just get a 4th bad motor. SECE copper head gasket and steel O-rings make a pretty decent head gasket. Yeah, you could do that too. I've never done copper head gaskets on anything with point loading and with O-rings on them. I've never done that, but after seeing what we've done with MLS head gaskets on the LS stuff and the cylinder pressure that we've had and the power output they've made and not hurt head gaskets, even on stock heads, we've done it, which surprises me given the fact that the deck thicknesses are so minimal. Too many Jameses in here. Got a Motec ECM. I'm only setting it timing to what you recommend. I'm trying to stay 14-to-1 air fuel is not what you want. 14-to-1 air fuel would be what you'd want under cruise, but not under wide open throttle. So please don't do that. Super octopus manifold, yeah. I thought I heard free valve. It's a 3 valve. I don't know if free valve is actually ever going to be a real thing. Kevin, I don't know that I don't even know if we need ported heads for that. Uh, 619 Omni, I believe the overboost feature is only for the high torque. That's not what all the data shows. Every cam is a turbo cam. Can the same be said for centrifugal supercharger, or is overlap more of a consideration? It's not. You overlap helps you make power. So you need to get past this this overlap conspiracy thing. Overlap makes more power. A cam that has overlap makes more power than a cam that doesn't have overlap. If you look at all of the performance cams, as we step up from the stock cam, it had negative 37 degrees of overlap. But the cams that made the most power also had the most overlap. And if you, like I said in the video, when you're choosing the cam, choose the cam basically for the RPM range that you want to run. And those high RPM cams, which is what you'd run with a centrifugal supercharger, depending on, I don't know what your combination is, but if you wanted to make peak power at 6,500, you need to have a cam that makes peak power at 6,500. And the cam that you run, if it works good NA, it will work good with that centrifugal blower, because I've run lots and lots of cams with centrifugal blowers too. Honda Tech. I don't know if we need twin GT45s on there. The James debate. The great James. Worked on a 6.2 with a Bald Eagle cam yesterday. Eduardo, this is flywheel horsepower. Do the 3-valve 4V10 heads have the same spark plug thread issue as the 5.4? Maybe something to check at the junkyard before pulling an engine. Or are you limited to timing on what? You put, we'll run all the timing that the motor will take to make the maximum amount of power. It's going to make 407 and 500 foot-pounds. That would be really nice. Julius, it's got to make more than 350 if it's rated at 362. So I don't think it'd be hard to break that. Mike, so what? What are you on? I'm scrolling down trying to get to. There's a lot of comments. There is lots, but if you have a question, please let me know. The Y pipe on a 1.5 OD on the V10 Triton 2 valve. I say, well, oh, it's 100. It's a 1.5 inch outside diameter. The Y pipe is. How could they have an exhaust pipe that's 1.5 inches? I've never even heard of that, except on little tiny 4-cylinder stuff. Eduardo, there's an infinite amount of space on the engine dyno for twins. Let's see. The 3-valve V10 makes 360 horsepower, 4,700 RPM. So probably it's not an RPM limit for the loader rated versions. Well, if you look at their ratings, their ratings are at a lower RPM. They're all not at 4,700. They are all not at 4,700. The 288 is at 4,000 and the 320 is at 3,900. That's why I was thinking that these were RPM limited. Car Farm, you have a Triton V10 there? Is it a runner? And is it a 3-valve? Car Farm's in the house. Thank you for all your hard work. Getting that racing GLHS, the CFX 001, Santa Fe Blue. I got a V10. I'm scared of snapping the crank. You could do a real world test with internally gated through a 3582 and then with an externally gated 35. You want to try just one of those on the engine dyno? We definitely would not be able to control. Well, I don't know that we would not be able to control the boost on that, because that thing a single one wouldn't make enough power for us to have to worry about that. We'd have a falling boost curve on one of those with the V10. If we ran two of them, we're not really going to have a boost creep problem, I don't think. There's a 3-valve buildup with 700 horsepower, 13.1 compression NA. I'm sure they had custom cams and stuff done for it. It makes 409 and it's at 3,700. It won't be at 3,700. 4,700 would be, or 5,700 would be more like it. We're not going to do a big bang on this. How do you think the split journal crank would handle a lot of horsepower? Not as well as not having that, probably. Richard's going to blow head gas and realize there's 50 Jameses here. I know, but if I just say James, somebody's going to answer me. Question, do you see differences in cheap composite versus OEM composite gaskets? I do. I don't buy cheap gaskets. I've been through that with some of the offshore gaskets, which I don't use. When we put something together, a small block Chevy, big block Chevy, whatever, we use Felpro stuff. I don't use cheap ones. Can't remember the number, but I'm pretty sure Banks got over 400 on his V10 kits. Did Banks do headers and stuff for that? Kyle, you have a twin turbo 6.8 or 3-valve and a Fox body Mustang drag car. Stock, I was pushing 14 pounds of boost all day. Well, that should make good power then. So Kyle, tell us what you did to it. What mods did you do it? Richard, are we using street feel or high octane for what? That motor is 9.2 to 1, so it will make its maximum horsepower on 91. I would doubt that these heads flow 315 CFM. Maybe race ones do, but I'm sure stock ones don't. Could you get two 543 valve manifolds cut up and weld together for an intake flange to the Super Richie? No, the problem is that they're composite. The flanges are all plastic, so I can't plastic weld. I don't have an update on the trophy yet, on the trophy 4-cylinder. Yeah, Eduardo, we saw the free valve thing. I'm just saying that that's not really, at least the way that I understand it, is not. It's going to be hard to make it a viable thing. Was keeping the intake temperature down around 60 degrees. Kyle, did you have any problems with your spark plugs? Guys want to know. What cams are out there for the 98 Chevy 4.3 liter? Brodex makes, I don't know if Brodex makes cams for them, but Comp makes a bunch of cams for them. And then Crane made some also. What I would want to see, I didn't find the camshaft that I wanted for that, but there are cams available. I ran a cam test on the 4.3 on my channel. V4 and V10 have the same holes, the same spark plug holes. My patented dollar store whetstone and WD-40 technique will provide the proper RA finish to withstand 100 pounds of boost. I like the enthusiasm. James, what's your question? How's that, James? Will that work? Ported 3-valve heads flow 330, 220 from TEA. Ported versions. Yeah. What is a stock head flow? Does anybody know? Jewish, you're doing rotary stuff? That's very cool. The Ford, are you Ford single over cam 4 cylinders any fun for you? Do I like 2.3 liter SVO turbo motors? Yeah. Overbuilt, what's up? The GLHS is back together. Are open chamber big block Chevy heads worth any mile per gallon? I don't know that the open chamber by itself is worth fuel mileage. I'm scrolling back. I obviously went too far. Okay, here we go. On the V10, the weak link is the crank. I just don't trust the rating. Ford overrated the 5.4 stuff and underrated the Barra. Jewish, what I can tell you is every modular motor that I've run has made more than the rated power output when we've run it on the engine dyno. Underdog, when you say all cams are turbo cams, are you saying all cams are PD blower cams? I have a 221, 240, 110 on a 463 valve with full variable cam timing, so plus 10 degrees of overlap. Going to run with a Roush blower. Okay. Does the question you need to ask yourself is, does your motor make good power NA? If it does, and you put boost on it, the boost is just going to multiply what's there. On a positive displacement supercharger, it's going to add immediate boost. But when you do that, you are also going to be getting rid of the intake manifold, which is going to change things for you. It's going to change the power curve based on the change in runner length. But that camshaft will 100% work with your positive displacement blower. Woody's 74 Nova wants to know what air fuel gauge you guys recommend. Triton V10 uses V8 forged rods. Very cool. My V10 is an 04. It has 2.5-inch exhaust, neck down to 1.5 and then to 3. I don't see how that's going to help anything except make a big restriction. DJKR, I have a V10 with a large cam and a large single turbo in a Fox. It makes over 800 foot-pounds by 3,500. Red lines at 73. So where did you have your cam done? Cams, because there would be 2 of them. Matthew, I think that the V12 or the V10 Triton 2 valve can take more boost, and the first gen had cast alloy intake manifolds. Yeah, we talked about the intake manifold. Well, why would you think that the 2 valve would take more boost, but it would require more boost to make the same power? Because it's going to be down 50 horsepower from the 3 valve one anyway. You heard the restricted pipe was for low end torque. I don't know that that the exhaust is gonna do that. That restricting the exhaust, I've never seen help low end torque. DJ split journal crank isn't limiting. Current record is over 1,000 horsepower on 1,200 foot-pounds. Friend has one with twins in an expedition. I kept mine single because I race it on a road. You race a V10 on a road course? Ported 3V heads, flow 330. Yep, we did that. Side note, I'm prototyping a DAS waste spark system for an 80 Mustang 200 inline 6-cylinder. So far, so good. We'll be using 3 Pertronix pickups to fire each coil. I'm curious why you're putting so much ignition on a 200-inch inline 6-cylinder. The 3-valve intake was aluminum down here. You guys get different stuff. The pictures that I've seen, I'm not an expert on V10s, but the pictures that I saw of the 3-valve and the 2-valve, the 3-valve showed composite intake manifolds here, but I don't know if that was all of them. Fabricated aluminum intake, DJ, cool. I scrolled too far. Here we go. Short runner twin inline 5 style aluminum intake manifold type. Cool. Will stock heads in a 4.3 support for 500 to 600 horsepower? They will with boost, but not NA. 4.8 and make rent, or 6.2 and deal with consequences. Well, what are you trying to do? A turbo 4.8 makes lots of power. Stock 3V before party was 260. So 260 is enough to make a lot of power. So it would be 2.2. Yeah. So that's enough to make 570 horsepower or so NA. So that's a lot. Come on. I don't have all day. Car Farm, you have turbo motors? Dude, I need to come out there. I should come visit you guys sometime. It's just a hop, skip, and a jump in 3 days of driving. DJ, do you have the stock? You don't have the stock rods and pistons in yours, do you? Stock crank, though? Kyle, the engine has stock internals except for valve springs, of course, and made custom intake and put bigger injectors, 85 twin 66 millimeter turbos. Very cool. And Kyle, what did you do to your intake manifold? Ram truck, what should I set the rev limiter to on the small block 350? It depends on what you've done to it and where the thing makes power. Kyle, 14 pounds, 569, 3,600 pounds. What mile an hour is that in the eighth? Kyle, it seems like you need cams. AEM wideband all the way, says James, one of the Jameses. So Dave wants to know what you guys think about balance shaft removal on a 2.3 Duratec. I don't know why are guys removing the balance shaft? I've used the Innovate AFR stuff. We use that on the Bonneville car. How high can a small block Chevy rev? Well, in NASCAR, small block Chevys went to 9,500, and drag race ones run five digit stuff. So it depends. I've been wanting to buy the Banks white pipe and just race car stuff first. You should just go have a white pipe made for it. It would be really inexpensive. It'd be a lot less than buying the Banks one. Why don't you give the advance as ground in when you give the camshaft specs? We can, but you have the horsepower data, so I don't understand. I don't understand why that's important. All of the other specs are not important, but the advance ground into it is important. That's not the case. Todd, what's up? I'm hole saw porting my 2V modular heads. Very good. For 500 horsepower NA. Not sure if I have a 10-minute or lag. I'm still not down to the bottom of the comments yet. Can I turbo a crate 350? Yes. My 5.3 is soaking in oven cleaner. I've heard they removed the balance shafts for more RPM. Balance shaft removal is, I don't know why that's such a thing, but in every motor that has a balance shaft, that's the performance upgrade that everybody goes to. Oh, there's 4.3s. We take the balance shaft out. All the 2.4 plus whatever 4-cylinder motors. Oh, we took the balance shafts out. Todd, what's up? I've heard they removed balance shafts for more RPM. Yeah, I don't think that does. I think I'm down at the bottom. So now I can go from top chat to live chat. 82% on our poll saying that they think it will go over 400. Rebuilding an LQ4 6-liter truck, adding a truck Norris cam and ring gap. In your opinion, would you add a fast intake or stay with the stock one, using the truck daily and also the pull trailer? I wouldn't upgrade the intake manifold. If you can find a cheap Trailblazer SS, I might put that on. If you're going to end up adding boost, you're not going to need the intake upgrade. The turbo is going to do everything that you want. Remove my balance shafts because it would be spinning 16,000 RPM. We remove the balance shafts on the Neon to prevent the plastic guides from failing and grenading the engine. The Trailblazer SS cost me $100 new from Rock Auto. We bought a couple of them way back too, and they were cheap, but I don't think that they are anymore. Big Belly, yeah, you missed a GLH update. It's back together. It's the car farm guys fixed it. Yep, Ben, car farm making it happen. Tightening all of Richard's loose bolts with a loose nut behind the wheel. Richard, I like to hear this. Richard, for your V10 testing, the main two things to consider are the intake manifold, which I plan to change, and valve springs, which we'd obviously change. I want to put a camshaft in it too. Those are what kill top end on the V10, solve those, and it's Ford's best engine, in my opinion. Very cool. So DJ, did you have cams done, and who did them, and what did you do and all that? Because I probably would have a set, at the very least, I'd try to have a set of regrinds done so that I could add 10 or 20 degrees of duration or something, just to, make it happier upstairs. Just so it pulls on the big end, to 5,700 instead of 4,700. $250, $264, a 118 LSA from Bullet. Is it $250, $264 at 50? Ben, Car Farm Ben, did you guys run the Porsche on the chassis dyno? No regrinds exist. The guys from Schneider can regrind the cams, right? I'm sure that they can. We just change the base circle. We'll just have to shim the lash adjusters or something accordingly, which I've done on the modular V8s a lot. $139 Rock Auto GM Genuine Trailblazer SS. You should snatch that up then. My goal was 5,000 RPM and higher. Okay. Well, 250 that's a good size cam. Yeah, the manifold's bare, no rails. Sometimes finding the rails for the Trailblazer SS is difficult. The cams are hollow and the lobes are pressed on. I'd recommend regrind and go full custom forge. Yeah. I remember seeing the way that when Ford introduced those cams, when they introduced that engine family, watching a video from Ford about how they make those cams with the hollow tubes and using the hydraulic press to press that what is basically a ball bearing, big steel ball through the tube and have it lock the lobes on. I'm like, oh yeah, that's never going to work. And yet. The V10 is your life. That's good. So do the guys from Bullet have blanks for those then? Because that's always the problem with getting custom cams done. Oh, 100% custom from Tool Steel. Okay. Yeah, those are not cheap cams then. Yeah, 2,500 is that. Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking. JMS, the only V10 I vaguely mess with is a BMW V10. Those are cool though. Help the customer get the VVT working. 4X. Oh, I know what I wanted to look up. So, what is it? A Kia? Does anybody know, is the Kia? Oh yeah, the Kia 3.8 liter is a Hyundai engine, right? Okay. So they do have VVT. And GDI in 2012. Okay, that's more work than I was contemplating helping somebody with one of those motors that's racing it, and I just read about it. And I'm kind of not interested. My neighbor has a stock 6.8 liter V10, 240,000 miles, pulls his trailer like a dream. I have 30,000 miles in my engine. Oh, 30,000 Is it 30,000 miles or $30,000? Use Mega Squirt to control it. Car Farm, I can't even get a newfangled Dodge Gen 4 Hemi motor because I don't even have that kind of money. Jeff, you want to see a 78 millimeter versus a 102 millimeter throttle body? There'll be two things that affect that. One, the intake manifold that you tested on, but more importantly, the power level that you tested on. So if you tested on a stock motor where the 78 millimeter throttle body probably flows enough to support the power level, it's probably not going to gain anything. But the more powerful the combination that you test that on, the greater the gain that you're going to get from throttle body size. If you test it on a turbo application, you're not going to get any change in power because the throttle body is not really it's not going to be a restriction when you're pressurizing it. The Car Farm does not sell parts. Oh, so you sleeved your block and stuff? Okay. Richard, are you starting the 24-hour today? No. Boosted 4.8, got offered $3,000 for my 04 Cat Eye. She's rusty. Not a fan of rusty cars. Although the Nova, had a little something. Sleeves only, so I can quickly rebuild it. Yeah. Excuse me. In the Omni stock NA horsepower versus ported head and cam, a 10% improvement. I would be surprised if it's only that much. Thomas, the 8.1 liter is probably going to make more power than the 6.8 liter is. It's just bigger. Underdog, I don't know when the twin M90 content is coming. Yeah, the Chicago area will definitely have rust, like the stuff at the Car Farm. I'm going to go ahead and close our poll out at 78% saying yes. Yep, torque is important for truck motors. Steve, I don't really know how your question is like a one of an absolute deal, and there's not that answer. It depends on what cam you're talking about. It depends on who did the porting. It depends on what order you're testing those on. There's a lot of stuff. Both of those things are beneficial. The raising the boost is the easier thing of those two, of the three. DJ KR, thank you very much. Yeah, I might have questions. So that would be great. My first question is: is the flywheel specific on the V10? And then I just need to know if the Holley will run a V10. Special agent, what factors dictate what kind of duration lift split we're looking for? The ported 2.2 head has not been on an engine yet because I haven't gotten the stock engines run yet. Using aluminum lightweight from a 4.6. So will the modular and V8 ones work on there? Special Agent James, I don't I like dual pattern cams, and the change in split that you use will be dependent on where you want to make power. But there are other things that come into play that answer that same question. So what power do you want to make and where do you want to make it? And then I can tell you what cam does that. It's probably an easier way than you worrying, or any of us worrying, about one aspect of a camshaft. Steve, I think you can probably do some head porting yourself and not spend any money on it. And I think also you can use some of the factory cams, like the NA, the TBI cam, and you would pick up power from the cam that's in there. I don't know what year you have, but having the right turbo on there and turning up the boost, a turbo and an intercooler, is going to be your best thing. And I don't know if you're trying to make 600 horsepower or something like that, you're going to need rods and pistons, and a ported head is going to help, and a camshaft is going to help. So DJ KR, you're 250, 264, high RPM, high compression. Did you have that wide of an LSA because you wanted to run more engine speed? 86 GLH. Use a fast, Jeff, thank you very much. Use a fast LS6R. But as I said, what power level do you want me to test that at? If you test it on a turbo motor, you're not going to see anything. It won't do anything. If you test on a stock motor, you're probably not going to see anything. If you test it, like what level do you want to test that at? That's going to dictate how much throttle body you need, because the flow rate of the throttle body is the power output needs are in direct relation to the flow rate of the throttle body. So as we go up in power, you need more throttle body. That's not, I mean, I can try to do the test, but again, you have to let me know whatever answer you're looking for as to what, on a 400 horsepower motor, the stock throttle body is going to be enough. I wouldn't recommend somebody do a throttle body upgrade on that. I wouldn't recommend that they have a fast manifold on a 400 horsepower NA LS anyways. V10 carburetor and distributor recommendations. I'm still curious if we can make an adapter to put a carburetor on the opening where the throttle body goes on the elbow for the V10. Can you go backwards if you port? Yeah, you could ruin ports too. You can use Audi inline 5 distributors. But the V10 doesn't have distributors, right? It has it's like the rest of the modular Ford family. You just have an E-disc or something on it. The V10 trigger is 38 or 40 to 1. That's so I make us work with it. Is the crank trigger the same on the V10 as it is on the other modular Fords? The crank and cam triggers, are they the same? They're not? Okay. Or was that no for another question that I asked previously? That was probably for the distributor things, right? Yeah. So let me know if the crank and cam trigger, they're not the same. Okay. Most 4Gs 36 minus 1. Yeah. Julius, you want to use aluminum rods? Anyone here know a good solution for a turbo oil return that doesn't involve welding a bung to the oil pan or timing cover? You don't have to weld a bung. They have bulkhead fittings that you just drill a hole and you just tighten the two sides of it. It's really easy. Very easy. You can also just drill into the block and tap that usually. Build Ford's version of the Viper using the V10. Not interested in building a car. Very interested in making V10 power, though. The Viper V10s have won lots and lots of races. So I would say that they are pretty good. Thanks, Richard. I wasn't sure if the bulkhead fittings were prone to leaking. The ones that we use, we got it from CX Racing, but they have the like Stelasto rubber O-ring fittings on them. And so when you tighten them, it seals up pretty good, providing that you drill the hole the right size. I would rather see a V8 in the Viper myself. Yeah, but it's, you know, it's a V10. It's two better. They obviously didn't have very high specific output and stuff, but I remember talking to the Eureka guys when they were racing back when we were doing World Challenge and stuff, and they were commenting on how much they loved the motors because they were really, really big, and they kept running restrictors on them. They're like, good, that's perfect for us, because if you're going to limit us to say 600 horsepower because we're racing these at Le Mans or whatever series that they're racing in them, and it just means that we make 600 horsepower from, 3,000 to 5,500, wherever you're going to limit us to, and it just helps save our engines because we don't have to rev them as high. Have you tested sloppy stage 3? I have not. I don't see how that cam fits stock piston to valve clearance. But if it does, I mean, it's a cam that I can try. I don't think I've ever run one that big on stock piston to valve. One more minute, because I have to come back in like an hour. And then we're going to talk about the 400 horsepower stock cam Ford nonsense. DJ, what you're running 1,000 horsepower and 800 foot-pounds. So you're making peak power beyond 5,200. If that's the split, it's a pretty good bit beyond that. What road racing are you doing? 6,700, yeah. And on that note, it is time to go. Thank you guys all. Good. This was good tonight. It is kind of tonight already. And for a lot of guys, probably even more tonight. But I'll be back in like an hour and 15 minutes or something. So I want to talk about the 400 horsepower Ford thing with the stock 5-liter cam, because I don't think it's real. And I'm going to tell you why. So I will see you guys all later.